Hey, Ronit. So it's day 600 of what we call the hostage crisis. It's 600 days people have been in captivity. I was talking in class yesterday. I teach creative nonfiction. We have a workshop, and the issue of voice is constantly coming up. And we were reading this beautiful piece by Lucy Greeley. It's from a book that she wrote called Autobiography of a Face. And in that book, she has suffered great physical trauma, disfigurement from cancer that comes back and back again. A beautiful piece about suffering. And not only suffering, not suffering for its own sake, but it's a crafted, beautiful piece. Anyway, one of my students said, you know, how can we possibly write like she does? Um, she had this disfiguring cancer, meaning she had this extraordinary thing happen to her. And of course she was able to write about it. And I thought, and being the workshop leader, I thought and said that it's not what happens to you, it's how you tell that story of what happens to you. I mean, by the way, this is what we talk about, what we want for Balagan, our magazine. Not just what happened, and not even why it happened, but this happened to you. And I spoke to them, and I think one of the things that people don't understand is we're at war and we feel it all the time. So I feel much more comfortable than I would have in the past in talking to my students about the courage to speak and the importance of that voice and the importance of telling our story of who we are today. And I know, Renee, we've talked about this, about how sometimes we feel silenced.
I think the most important thing is understanding there's validation in your voice. And I think that's what maybe the student was saying is she was saying, you know, do I do I have a right to voice, my
Mm,
perhaps mediocre life or, my normal life? And then the other question that is asked, will it be interesting? So, I mean, that's, for a voice, when we constantly say the word voice, that's just very, it can be confusing to people, but it's just, and it becomes the essence of who you are, and it's
mm,
translated to whatever art form that you're familiar with, that you're happy with, that you're good at. But and I think going back to what we're feeling is that there's we as Israelis, or I'm speaking, you know what, not even we, me as an Israeli, I feel there's no validation to what I'm feeling or what I'm going
mm,
through. I think, people think that we're looking from the outside. A stranger might look and just say, oh, they're probably so happy because,
mm,
they're, everything is just great. And, they're alive, and it just, it's so far from the truth because
mm,
we're very much in despair. I feel, yeah, we're trying to stay alive, and we try to live because, if we don't, it's will crumble. So you kind of, it's almost like you wake up in the morning and
mm,
it's just, one step at a time. And what
mm,
people see from the outside is that we're walking, but they don't
mm,
see us just struggling to take that first step and then that second step. And it's the 600, this milestone. I mean, again, people have to understand that we have this constant reminders of what's happening. You can't just, you're not holed up in your house and you're just happy because you're watching cartoons. It just doesn't exist in Israel. Everything is
mm,
so, it's just infused with what's happening, that it
mm,
just touches every part of your existence. So like today I was walking, it's the 600 days, and there are lots of
mm,
demonstrations. And my son, he's in 11th grade and in junior in high school, and he went to the demonstration in Kikar Hatufin. in Tel Aviv. So the day he wasn't, today is not a day of studying. Today is a day of just going and just being with the families. So that's
Wow.
something that they did in the educational system. So that's my son. Today, and this morning, I took my daughter to school at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we passed um, another site of demonstration. The first demonstration, it was 7:45. It was that early,
Mm,
and there were some people, it was very small, and people were, there were drums, and there were, there was screaming, and there was shouting, and
mm,
the easy thing to do was just to kind of walk, back to my house. I have tons of things to do, but I made it a point to just kind of cross the street and not just stare at them, but just kind of just say, in my essence, I'm with you for, even two
mm.
minutes. And then just, and then I went to my day because I had stuff to do. But it's it's constantly there. It's
The
we're
temptation not to do what you did is so great. And I when I take the train and then the bus to Bar Ilan, there, especially at Hashalom in the train station, there are it's every train station in Tel Aviv. There are pictures of the hostages every single place. And it's not those that get to me the most. I mean, because you habituate yourself, but it's, the picture of the one girl. I am also a woman, right? And she's still in Gaza. What about me? And I feel guilty because sometimes I just look away. I can't look at it. And I think that's what you mean. I mean, you did the other thing. You actually said, I'm going to take the time to. And I think we all do. I mean, I do take the time to do that, but it's so overwhelming if you don't say sometimes, I just can't, because that despair is so palpable.
right. And I think also where it's I embraced that. It's out of respect. I embraced that heaviness that went along with
Mm,
me just stopping and just looking at the signs and understanding there's, there are hostages. Hostages, I mean, it's a word, but it encompasses, young people just, just being there for 600 days, and they have families, and it doesn't. And that's also the thing is that people have to understand that there's a lot of critique about what's happening around here. None of us are just very happy with what's happening. So, I mean, we have empathy for what's happening in Gaza as well, but you know, it's
mm,
it's just this nonstop wave of despair and fear and anxiety. And yes, we need to be reminded, right? The 600 days, I mean, there was a 500
mm.
days and there was a 550 days, and we need to be reminded all the time, but it takes a toll. And we're just, it's a very dark day today, I think,
See, you
for
made
us.
that like you made that emotional a move of real empathy. And I know you and I know Israel. I know it's not just standing by the sidewalk. It's existential. You just become part of it. And then as you said, you walk away. So you made that effort. I mean, but are we also allowed to speak, or should we feel, should we I think we could talk for a very long time about survivor's guilt. Are we, does the fact that we survived, does that privilege mean we can't really talk?
Um, Today, I think today is a bit different because today is not a day for, I mean, we're talking about this, but today is a day of, we have so many of those days, a day of remembrance. I mean, Israel is full of like days of remembrance, right? We always remember. We remember the Holocaust. We remember the fallen. We remember. It's. How do
Mm,
you manage to balance
mm,
and a life, as a parent, as a spouse, as, as an active member of society, with this constant reminder of the atrocities happening around you. And how do you maintain a voice? And what is your voice? And how does I mean, my voice is not the same voice that was a year, almost 2 years ago. It's almost like my mind is trained to say year and a half, but time moves very fast. It's not a year and a half
600
ago.
days, 600 days, 600 days.
600 days, and it's, almost 2 years. And the despair is
Mm,
is not just on basic human level, but it's also on where do we go? Like, is there a plan? Please let there be a plan, please, of an agreement of just, getting somewhere better for everyone.
Mm,
So the 600 days encompasses all of that. It encompasses those the hostages. It encompasses the situation that we're in. It encompasses the despair. It encompasses, fear for the future, the anxiety. And
mm,
it's a forceful day. It's like that force that made me, cross the street and stare at them. It was like I owed it to them. I owe it to myself as a human being.
okay.
But then I went home, right? And then I had
What's
my
the part,
coffee.
what's the part that you owe to yourself as a human being? What do you mean by that?
I mean that I can't go on. I'm not, and I mean, like, it's really, it's an interesting thing to think about because it's like I'm not allowed to have a carefree life, which I'm not. None of us are. That's, I think, what people need to understand. I'm not. But specifically on this day, it's like a force field that just kind of draws you into this state, so you can empathize and sympathize with those people, the families, what
Mm,
they're going through, and then also revolt against this dead end that no one seems to want to get out. I mean, the people high on top. We search for an end to this. But that day it's just horrific because it's so long.
how
Just
do you
it
express,
just
how do you express a revolt against it? What do you mean?
it's a revolt against it. We feel it's almost like it's static. It's where it's
We feel like we're just like the time is not passing. We're just in this place and we're just waiting. It really, does come to mind, you know? What are we waiting for?
um yeah. I mean, we it's that's why this day I think is very it's very touching to. I mean, it also it represents this idea of now it's almost becoming like there will be no end to it, because once you reach 600, it's almost like
Mm,
it's what's next. It's 700, 800, 900, 1,000. It's just um, numbers. Jews are very sensitive to numbers. um we're always grouped into numbers, right? You're always just so it's
what numbers are we?
well,
I mean,
I mean, the
what's the first
Holocaust,
number?
it's like there's
I'm
always,
so okay. So the first number that it's like
just,
it's like that talk show. What's the first number that or game show? My number is 6 million. What's two, three, four, and five?
no, it's just we're always reduced to this.
I
It's
see.
like the Jews are always reduced to numbers. I mean, there are not many of us, so I guess it just makes sense to kind of group us to numbers. And it's just, yeah. I mean, I think it's early, so so it's still early. So I think the day will progress to become even more hectic and more emotional. Um, I mean, that's what I'm, what I think will happen. I mean, I will definitely, will go to a hopefully peaceful demonstration and just kind of, just show my face there and say, yes, we want some sort of a bright future ahead,
Yeah. I mean, I think you also say, and it's implicit, but it's important to make explicit that this is the American metaphor that I use. I usually use it in other contexts, that Israel is like this giant summer camp. And what I mean by that is that, the things that you're saying and feeling, and neither one of us are the kind of person that will go across the street to be part of a demonstration. Neither one of us are, right? And so pretty much everybody else is there's this common experience it's not like the tri-state area in New York. You know, if it doesn't happen in the tri-state area, and I don't know what's happening if I'm in New York City. But here, everybody on some level, you know, we use the term everybody maybe too often because there's always somebody who's not everybody. We acknowledge that. But, you know, everybody is just going through this story. And I think the thing that is kind of terrifying for us is that this whole time, you know, we're hoping for the narrative to reach an end. And like you said, we're not just leaning back, and we're not going to experience the same kind of tranquility that we did in the past. The tranquility of, you know, your life before my life, different kinds of tranquility. That's what we're facing, I think.
I I think the duality of the reality and trying to maintain some sort of normality is something that we
Mm,
will explore years to come, because it's so, the contrast is so great between them. And Israel, I think, is a country that tries to walk that balance,
yeah.
right? It's trying to move forward, but just is infused with this, you know, with death and history and the weight
Mm,
of the ancestors and what people think about us and the stereotypes. And I mean, people everywhere, what they want is just to just kind of exist. They want food, they want, nourishment, they want, just to survive. And I think Israel is an interesting case of trying to balance that. Right now, it's shifting towards the despair. The normality doesn't really exist. I mean, people think there's some sort of normality, but it's on a thread. It's very, very frail. But I
mm.
want a better future for everyone. I want something to happen. It's just,
I was
600 days.
I was on the beach in Tel Aviv last week, and I saw everybody playing paddleball and volleyball. It was really an idyllic scene. And I remember thinking to myself that, you know, trauma shouldn't have come to this place. This is such a, how could it have happened? And you told me at the time that the paddleball playing it's real, but in a way it's an effort. It's not like it used to be.
It's an effort because it's the only thing that is holding people into not diving into despair. It's just, it's if we act like
Mm,
everything is semi-normal, or if we do the things that we used to do, there's this illusion that we might survive this. This is, I think, our form of resilience. I mean, people don't see underneath, they see what the visual is on the surface. But I think it's a cry for almost like a mental state where you're saying, I'm gonna do this and it looks like it's normal, so therefore I am normal. But it's very hard on a daily basis to not walk around like, in despair, in anxiety, in the constant threat, the worry. I worry all the time. I worry for my children. I worry.
mm,
And it's an interesting illusion that is then perceived by outsiders to be almost like
mm.
this hedonistic kind of thing, but it isn't. I think that's the tools of survival. I mean, right? I mean, it's like what, like poetry after Auschwitz.
There you
I
go.
mean,
The fictions we tell to survive.
it's that's how I see. I mean, again, are we at the time where we can reflect? Not really. But when I try to look at the situation, when I try to
Mm,
absorb the criticism from the outside, I try to think, why is that
mm,
happening? Why are people going to the beach right now where everything around us is just
mm,
and I think that's what we're trying to, that's the fine balance. And the thread is so frail. People don't
mm,
understand. It's so frail. They cannot, the economy, Israeli
mm,
economy is in the dumps. Uh, sorry. And the threat from Yemen, from Lebanon,
mm.
from Syria, from
I mean, I have to say though that I mean the talking, the telling of the story. I mean, you've been talking a lot about despair, but somehow I feel better after our conversation.
I don't.
Next,
Because then I realize everything, once you realize that things are just hollow, that we're just, it's us trying to hover above the ground. It just kind of makes
Mm.
me, for me, it takes me down instead of up. But I'll survive. I hopefully, I don't know. I hope we'll
next,
survive. I think that should be like I hope we'll survive.
next time with Bill and Ronit, hopefully.
Hopefully we'll survive.